there. It's Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting dodo birds and leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do to that like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel, also do that while you're here. Let's get into it. Today we are starting our summer shoot-around series that we're going to be doing over the next few weeks. A little different setup than we've done in previous years. This summer, we're going to go through the top 10 of my top 25 and one in the order that the schools are ranked. And then we're going to do a few other team-centric episodes about programs that aren't in my top 10, but are still interesting for whatever reason. So, yes, we're eventually going to do Kentucky and Arkansas and St. John's and Ohio State. I think we might even auction off a 15th episode like we've done before. So stay tuned for that. Either way, we're starting the summer shoot-around series with Kansas because the Jayhawks are number one in the top 25 and one. Last season, Kansas went 23-11 overall, just 10-8 in the Big 12, finished tied for fifth in the league standings. They lost their opening game in the Big 12 tournament to Cincinnati, then got a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, beat Samford round of 64, got beat by Gonzaga round of 32. They finished 27th at Kenpom. Obviously, it was a disappointing season in part because newcomers Nick Timberlake and Elmarco Jackson were both disappointing, but also because Kevin McCullough Jr., who was the team's best player until he got hurt and only played 3 times after February 17th. He was shut down in advance of the Big 12 tournament. McCullough now in the NBA. So is Johnny Furphy. But Hunter Dickinson, KJ Adams, DeJuan Harris are all back. So KU returning 3 starters. And Bill Self is also enrolling a monster class. It's headlined by Wisconsin transfer A.J. Storr, Alabama transfer Rylan Griffin, 5-star freshman Flory Badonga. Again, I have Kansas ranked number 1 in the top 25 and one. We'll see what Norlander thinks about that next. But first, let's get a word from our partners. Okay, Norlander, Kansas as the preseason number 1 team. Tell me if you recognize this.
I knew you were going to do this. Go ahead.
Can you dig it, or do you despise it?
More of the former than the latter, but I'm here to say and proclaim that I will not rank when I got to do my top 101 teams in October. I will not have Kansas number 1.
Oh, I see Norlander still trying to play judge and jury with KU. They beat the NCAA, and you still want to hold them accountable.
Yeah, tricky little thing that, isn't it? Listen, it's a good team with arguably the best coach in the sport. No Elmarco Jackson this upcoming season. Now, he was not the freshman impact player that we were thinking he might be, but he had a patellar tendon injury in June, so they don't have him. Dickinson, KJ Adams, DeJuan Harris is a really nice trio, a very, very nice trio. A.J. Storr from Wisconsin, Rylan Griffin via Alabama, Zeke Mayo comes in from South Dakota State. Those are the 3 most impactful transfers. There is a good nucleus here. I don't know if I buy that this is going to be the best roster in the sport, though. It's not. I don't think it's fated to be number 1 in preseason predictive metrics. It's not at Torvik, right? I remember we talked about that recently.
It is 4th at Torvik.
Okay.
If you want the teams in front of it, number 1, Houston, number 2, Duke, number 3, Iowa State. Those are all teams we will get to in my top 10.
How about that? Iowa State number 3 preseason. I had it projected Torvik top team in the Big 12. Good on. No,
I saw some other media people and fans on message. I was on some message boards and they were like, "Here goes TJ Otzelberger again. He's done tricked the net. Now he's tricking Torvik. They just constantly tricking people over there.
Trolling message boards in the thick of the off season. Gosh, how great is it to be you right now? That's incredible. A lot of really good potential with Dickinson. Let's start on Dickinson here. He is what he is defensively. At this point, I'm not seeing a a major diversion from the fact that he is a net negative on the defensive end. Offensively, very good. Third-team All-American at CBS Sports last season. He's one of, I think, 3 All-Americans we had that are returning to the sport. I believe the number's 3. Right. It might be 4.
R.J. Davis, Mark Sears, and Hunter Dickinson.
So, let's pencil him in for 20 and 8.5, and he's going to be a key part and a really good offensive big man. In fact, we were just at Peach Jam, and I was thinking, I can't believe, I guess it's been 7 years since I saw Dickinson play at Peach Jam. That kind of blows my mind. The time's moved by that fast, but at the same time, he's still in college. It's felt like twice as long, but if he can maintain that status and be a top 15 player in the country, I think that's going to be necessary for Kansas to be a top 5 team in the country. KJ Adams, he's got some of his limitations offensively because he does so much damage in the paint near the rim. What kind of expansion do we get from his game? And then DeJuan Harris, will he, even more so become can he be a top 3-4 point guard in the country? I think these are a lot of the questions and the things that'll need to happen in order for Kansas to rebound after, unquestionably, GP, a letdown of a season. They're going to enter in as a universal top 5 team. I think that's entirely fair. Storr was a really good transfer last year at Wisconsin after being just kind of a jag at St. John's. He goes to Bucky, and man, was he not an impact player there. So there's an expectation that the Storr you got at Wisconsin is going to be the same one, if not better, at Kansas. Rylan Griffin, who started to emerge as a really good 3-point threat at Alabama. Can he become even better and be that kind of guy they need? They need him to be a good 3-point shooter and a consistent, a frequent guy who's hitting multiple per game. Zeke Mayo, a highly productive player, former Jackrabbit there. I think they're all going to be quality players, but I'm a little bit wait and see on, are they all going to mix and blend? Are we really going to see a number 1 seed? How much will Floyd Badunga be? I mean, top 20 prospect in the country, big man down low. How much run is he going to get? They got a 4-star guard, or Keith Passmore, who will probably be pretty solid, but how much time is he going to get? Noel Marco, I think, is a ding on them. They're an intriguing team. I do think that I'm going to stop short of saying that they're going to be the preseason number 1 or number 2 team. I'm not all the way there, but I am there in terms of self and them being a better team and certainly finishing at the end of the season, at the end of the tournament, with more wins than they had last year.
So I mentioned Kansas finished 27th at Kenpom last season, and I sort of just chalked that up to really 2 things. One, a total lack of depth that was largely tied to the idea that neither Nick Timberlake nor Marco Jackson performed to expectations. I can remember in the preseason, whether we were stupid or not, I can remember in the preseason, we were like, I just don't know what you do with one of those guys. I mean, who starts, but the other one's coming off your bench, and my God, that's amazing. And it turns out neither one of them were any good. So that was a problem. And then, of course, Kevin McCullough gets injured. Did they have to shut him down? And if you, hand to heart, if somebody asked me, tell the truth, why do you think Kansas wasn't good last season relative to what KU normally is? I would say that's it. No other issues. It was just those things I just mentioned. On the other hand, that was the second time in a 4-year span that they finished outside of the top 25 at Kenpom. And that's not something KU normally does. It's something. Does that concern you that it's 2 of the past 4 years they've finished outside of the top 25, or shut up, they'll be national champions?
No, I think there might be a little some of that. There's also impacts from COVID and all that stuff that's playing a part. But when, as we're digging back into our summer shoot around stuff and looking more into these teams, and really now for the first time poking around under the hood and seeing what's there, I do think it's within the realm of possibility, especially in that Big 12. Kansas is going to be a preseason top 5 team, but I think it's possible that I'm not going to say outside the top 25 again this season, but if you told me that this group, when I look at this roster and say, yeah, they finished 3rd in the Big 12, they were outside the top 15 in most metrics there, I certainly think that's a potential possible outcome there. I want to see a little more variety on offense from KJ Adams, who defensively, really good player, and getting him back was so huge. And DeJuan Harris is a pass first point guard. I don't know if he's going to grow into someone that can be more of a lead guard, or if they want him to be that. But I do think the potential is there because, again, the Big 12 now goes to 16 teams this season. We'll get into the schedule breakdown in our reliable staple, regular season, over, under, total, win total. We're going to get to that before the end of this quickie pod. But roster-wise, I'll say this. We got the big 3 back. Storr, Griffin, Mayo. Who else? That's 6 guys, GP.
Mhm.
They should have Badunga, maybe Passmore, maybe. If you're a Kansas fan, you want 8 guys, at least 8 guys after the experiment from last year.
They've got 8 rock solid guys. It's the 5 projected starters, the reigning Summit League Player of the Year, Shaquille Moore, who's played at 2 other power conference schools, a good role player. And then Badunga's a possible one and done super athletic big. Like that's
possible. How they rotate him with
possible. I use the word possible.
Yeah. With Dickinson and how they play those two.
Right. So that's I do think losing Marco Jackson is that's not nothing. I know he was disappointing last season, but I'm a believer in 5-star guys coming back for their second year. Like it can break through a little bit then. Losing him matters. But I like the roster. If you wanted me to point out a concern with it, it's that they've got a lot of really good players, most of whom are flawed in some very obvious way. Like KJ Adams is in a time where a lot of schools would prefer to play 5 out. KJ Adams is a total non-shooter. All right. AJ Storr, he can go get you 17, but how many shots are going to take him? And how much? And how many of those 17 going to come from the 3-point line? He was 32% from 3 last year at Wisconsin. DeJuan Harris, a great run your team championship winning point guard. Not much of a scoring threat. There's that stat that's out there. Like when he scores X amount of points, they never lose, but the number is 1. It's not 1, but you get the point. There's something like that. And then Hunter is obviously a terrific college player, but there's a reason he's still in college, and it's because he's a nothing on the defensive end of the court. So I love the roster. Obviously, I wouldn't have him number 1.
You got this team number 1, GP.
But there's some flaws in there. I can acknowledge that, sure.
Yeah, I would say just in terms of the number 1 conversation, maybe a few too many flaws for me to buy in there. But it is, listen, that school, that program, that coach, that staff, there is such a reliable culture of winning and success that I'll tell you this, it's certainly way more likely that you'll be right than they'll repeat last year and be outside the top 20, not even top 25, top 20 in the metrics at Kenpom. I think that's definitely way more likely than not. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to hit you. I got a trivia time. I don't know how you'd start the summer shoot-around series without a trivia time.
That's a good point.
I don't know how you'd even seems crazy not to have a trivia time. So trivia time, I'm noted. Kansas finished outside of the top 25 at Kenpom last season, did it also 3 seasons prior. So it's 2 of the past 4 years they finished outside of the top 25 at Kenpom. Before that, how many consecutive years had Bill Self, being specific, finished in the top 25 at Kenpom before he has now finished outside of the top 25 2 of the past 4 years?
I'm going to say, oh man, I'll literally say the Tulsa years, and then it never happened at Illinois.
You're right. I mean, it's 21, and the streak includes 1 year at Tulsa, 3 years at Illinois, and then 17 straight years at Kansas.
So even his last year at Tulsa, he was inside the top 25?
Yeah. His last year at Tulsa, all 3 years at Illinois, and his first 17 at Kansas. And then they've fallen out 2 of the past 4. I don't put much of anything into that, but it's statistically notable.
A little slippage. And for Kansas and the Kansas fans listening to the show, we're all too aware of your knowledge, your passion, your devotion to this program. And if that were to happen, if we check in on Valentine's Day and Kansas is in 3rd or 4th or 5th in the Big 12 standings, and they're sitting there at 18th in Kenpom or 22 in Torvik, 24 in the net, that's going to cause some noise because the level of expectation at Kansas isn't superseded by anyone else in the sport. It might be equal by a few programs, but it's going to be an intriguing year there. And then Dickinson, I haven't yet started to really think about who we're going to have as the preseason national player of the year. Like Flagg will be in there. RJ Davis is coming off a first team All-American. It's actually going to be a pretty intriguing debate. But I think I think Dickinson, who he is, he's a really good player, but I don't know if he can be an absolute elite college player and get back to being borderline first-team All-American status. I think they may need him to do that in order to be the best team in the country. But this KU team and the situation there is going to be intriguing to follow. before I get to the schedule, any other notes, thoughts on
I
what
do.
Phil Self has done this off season and who he's built? Because the only other thing that I'll say that we haven't touched on roster wise, I think there's a real chance, and this would be really fun if it happened. Not Storr being the guy, and you mentioned Mayo, League Player of the Year at South Dakota State. I think that Rylan Griffin, if he does what they think he can do and will do, like he could go, like he averaged 11 for Bama last year. And there's tons of, I actually don't think to me, a breakout player's got to average single digits. It's a certain line of delineation. He averaged more than that, but his national profile could significantly pop. And I think he's got a really healthy chance of flirting with 15 or more a game.
Oh, and if he does that and the 3-point percentages stay similar, he shot 39.2% from
Goodbye.
3.
One and done.
Bye. Oh,
Goodbye.
buddy,
Yes.
you want to go 17th in the draft?
Yeah.
You can go 17th in the draft. He might end up being their best NBA prospect, depending on what people think of Flory, because he's terrific, but he's also 6'8". Mm-hmm. He's a little on the smaller side, but he's super athlete and all that stuff. We mentioned Zeke Mayo, reigning Summit League Player of the Year. He's a jackrabbit. I'm always in favor of adding jackrabbits. Sure. Creighton went out and got him a jackrabbit. That went pretty well for them. Mm-hmm. I'm a big believer. I love jackrabbits just almost as much as I like fighting camels. All right. Mm-hmm. You know where Zeke Mayo went to high school? I'm not trying to catch you off guard. Lawrence High. He's from Lawrence, Kansas.
Oh, is he really? There we go. Oh, you know what? Now you say that, I remember when he committed, there was.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it when you or other people do that to me. So
well, the difference is I don't care when you do it to me. So
okay. I don't like it when people do it to me. So I didn't mean to do that to you.
Trivia time. Where did Zeke Mayo go to elementary school? That's right.
Lawrence Elementary, I think.
You just have one elementary school in the town?
Just one. It's just one.
Okay.
One elementary school. Lawrence Elementary. He's from there. And when everybody, because I don't think everybody does it. I shouldn't even frame it that way. But when some people roll their eyes at the transfer portal and transfer waivers and NIL and all this stuff, and it's just so hard for the little guy. I was just at Peach Jam. I was sitting with the guys who coached, I was sitting with the little guys. Trust me, they're frustrated. It's hard. It's hard for them. I love this. This is the other side of it. I don't know anything about Zeke Mayo other than what's in his bio on the internet. All right. And what I can watch on YouTube and Synergy and that type of stuff. I'm going to assume that growing up in Lawrence, Kansas, I'm out on a limb here. I'm going to assume his dream was not to be a South Dakota State Jackrabbit. I bet you his dream was to be a Kansas Jayhawk. And coming out of Lawrence High, even though it's Lawrence High and he could clearly play, Kansas, probably accurately so, did not identify him as a recruitable student athlete. They just didn't think he was good enough, at that point. So he ends up being a jackrabbit. He goes to a mid-major. That ain't nobody's dream, or it's very few people's dream. And he goes there and he plays so well that eventually he is pursued by his hometown university, which also just happens to be one of the biggest and best programs of all time, an undeniable blue blood, and at least in my opinion, the team that should be expected to win the national championship in 2025. I will never not think that's an awesome story. That is somebody having a dream come true right now. And for all of the headaches that I know this stuff causes, mid-majors and low majors, I'll think it's always worth it because of stuff like that.
Yeah, no, it's a fun story that's got real potential to take another level there if he can produce similarly to how he did at South Dakota State, average 19 a game, almost 6 boards, 3.5 assists. He's not going to put up those same numbers at Kansas, but yeah, he's I'll tell you this, that staff is certainly expecting him to be as impactful as basically, no matter what I just said about Griffin and Storr's success at Wisconsin, all around his impact is expected to be similar to those guys, and we'll see how he folds in there. Let's look at the schedule here. Kansas has 6. So as a reminder, when we do the schedule look ahead, I usually normally just point out the games that are not bye games or not mid-major home games. So there are 6 on the schedule for Kansas this season. They host North Carolina on November 8th, first week of the season, which is just great stuff. And that's a return. That's a home and home. Love to see it. Champions Classic, Michigan State on November 12th. They play Duke in Vegas on November 26th. I tweeted this news out. It's been, I think, over a month now. But the plan, by the way, on this is that Kansas and Duke will play this like standalone neutral site game. And then I don't have the stuff up in front of me. Either next season, the season after, or after that. They're going to do a home and home. It's not like in ink yet, but Duke and Kansas are going to do home and home. Duke's going to play at Fog Island. Kansas is going to play at Cameron Indoor, barring stupid stuff getting in the way. So that's something to look forward to in the future. We love seeing that kind of stuff. But this year, it's the neutral in Vegas. So Carolina, then Michigan State, then Duke, and then when we get to December, Kansas has 2 non-con roadies. Self always schedules ambitiously. We love to see it. At Creighton in the Big East Big 12 battle, December 4th. Then they're at Missouri. Always like seeing the border war. And then they host NC State. That's actually a semi-random home and home, but they're going to get the Wolfpack in Fog Island this season. So they got those 6. And then when it comes to Big 12 play, they're home and homes. They're 2 plays in league play. UCF, sure, why not, man? Didn't they lose or almost lose at UCF last season?
I think they lost. I feel like they lost.
They lost. It's the Big 12's hottest new rivalry. UCF, then they've got home and home with Colorado, which makes sense given the history of those schools. Houston, obvious no-brainer. Iowa State, no-brainer. K-State, no-brainer. But that meant that they only host Arizona, which is, I guess no surprise. Arizona comes into the league. Kansas maybe makes a little call like, let's put this off here. So only one, which is a misfire by the Big 12, by the way. You should be having Arizona and Kansas play twice. What are we doing here? But they only host Arizona and they only host Texas Tech. Meanwhile, they play at Baylor, and Cincinnati might be like a top 35 team. They play at Cincinnati. So their 2 most notable single plays in league play are the hosting of Arizona and the hosting of Tech. They don't have to go to those places, but they do have to go to Baylor. They do have to go to Cincinnati. They don't host those teams. Last season, Kansas finished with 22 regular season wins. That's what they finished with overall, GP, right? I'm going to set the over-under because of the Big 12, because of this non-conference schedule, which is always challenging. Again, we are doing regular season. We are not taking Big 12 tournament play or NCAA tournament results into this. Is what your record is going into the Big 12 bracket. I'm going to set the over-under. I already know where GP's going here, but I'm going to set it at 23.5 because that's a really challenging schedule. The league is really good. And again, I'm not all in on Kansas being the absolute best team in the country next season. So I'm going to go under. I assume you're going over 23.5 in the regular season.
I feel like, if I'm attaching the number 1 to the K and the U, I got to be pretty high, right?
Yeah.
Just to your point about, I'm with you. I would love to see Kansas and Arizona play twice, and Kansas and Houston play twice, and Kansas and Iowa State play twice at some point. Like, because you were like, come on, Big 12. If somebody from the Big 12 was here, wouldn't they say, yo, man, like Bill Self does not want us to match him up twice.
It doesn't matter. Whatever. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Like, don't play UCF twice. Play Arizona twice. Like, I get it, but I don't do what's best for the marketing of your conference, and that's Kansas and Arizona playing twice.
I know, but I promise you, if the Kansas staff looks at a schedule and they've got 1 more home and home with like a top 10 team than Houston, that'll be an issue.
Yeah, no doubt. And by the way, Kansas and Houston were supposed to, and I think this is now off permanently. They were supposed to go and like play one-off in Mexico, and that's now no longer a thing, and so now they're going to do home and home, which is the better decision. But anyway, to your point, I hear that all the way.
Okay. Just off. We're doing 20 game Big 12 schedule, right?
I mean, they got 20 or is it 18? You know what? That's a good question because
it has been 18.
You know what?
They got to go to 20.
Here's the deal. I think it's 20. I think it's 20. Because I lose track of the convos I have. I think it's 20. I can't remember if the Big 12 announced that it was 20 or not. But coincidentally enough, I think it was it was at the Adidas event when I saw Self. And we're just kind of talking formula. I think there's still people in the league that want to go back to 18 at some point. And I was like, I'd love that too, man, but they're not going to do it. Like all these power conferences are going to 20 league games. Like I'd love to have 18 because that induces better non-conference scheduling. Regardless, I think for this upcoming season, it's going to be at 20 league games.
I'm going to go 25-6. 25-6 heading into the Big 12 tournament. Then I'm going to say, and I know we don't do this, I just want to have it on the record just in case it hits. 2-1 in the Big 12 tournament.
Yep.
So that puts me at
27-7.
And then 6-0. 33-7. Kansas Jayhawks national champions.
I'm going to say 23-8 in the regular season. So I put it over under 23.5. When I do the over under, I'm setting it. So I'm either going to be 1 game under or 1 game over. I will go 23-8 at Creighton, at Missouri. Those are tricky. And then, Carolina, Michigan State, Duke, and Vegas. It's conceivable Kansas enters Big 12 play with 4 losses. Predicting it'll happen, it's absolutely conceivable with 2 roadies and then 3 other games against top 25 teams. I will be surprised if Kansas and Bill Self in this roster are not a 1, 2, or 3 seed. I'll say that. But I think they've got a heck of a schedule ahead of them. Interesting year. We'll see if they can bounce back. Or if they don't, then you might have a little bit of a thing where 3 out of 5 years they're not, say, top 15, top 20 quality. But I'm not expecting that. Certainly will be pretty fascinating. And that's our first summer shoot around. I think it's in the books.
Yeah, it turns out, and this is going to surprise the masses, but turns out I believe in Kansas and Norlander does not, just like always.
Yeah, I think that's a theme with every episode, GP.
Yeah.
Endlessly optimistic, oftentimes wrong after the fact, by the way. And meantime, your boy over here's got to keep it real. So.
You just had it in forever for Kansas and Nico Medved.
Yeah. Well, that's why Colorado State's not getting an episode. Unless the Colorado State fans... As we record this first episode, we don't have the link live, but we're going to have the auction stuff again. So if you want the bonus episode, we are auctioning that off, and we'll have more details on that extremely soon.
I can't even imagine what it would be like if Nico Medved ever ends up coaching at Kansas.
It's over for him.
You'd have him in Division II.
That's right.
Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry Teagle. He's a legend.
I got a Nico Medved story for another time, by the way, completely unrelated to this. But I recently learned it on the recruiting show. We'll save that for another time.
What's up, Huck? What's up, Larnell? Where you at, Knuckles? If you're not subscribed to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball Podcast, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts. Apple, Spotify. There's more of us than there are of them. That should be reflected in the comments. So do that, and we will talk to you again real soon. Till then, take care.